He noticed her long before he understood why the sight of a trembling figure outside the mall made his chest tighten. She sat on the cold pavement near the entrance, her back bent, her hands tucked into the sleeves of a worn sweater. People passing by didn't slow down. Some lifted their collars to avoid the wind. Others turned their faces away as if seeing her meant inheriting her sadness. He tried to walk past her too, but something held him still. The curve of her jaw, the way her shoulders shook, the strange familiarity in a stranger's suffering. He stepped back, and the moment he looked at her face fully, his breath scattered. It wasn't a stranger. It was her. The girl he once imagined a future with. The one who left without a goodbye, a message, or an explanation. She had vanished so suddenly that the silence she left behind followed him for years. Every unanswered call, every late-night thought, every memory of shared dreams, he carried them without closure. And now, in a place where no one expected warmth, he found her shivering with a cardboard sign on her lap. It felt unreal, like life had bent back in time and dropped her in front of him to reopen a wound he thought had healed. He didn't speak her name, didn't ask questions. He simply stared, stunned by the cruelty of seeing someone from his past fallen so far. Inside the mall, he walked mechanically, mind replaying every detail. She had always been proud, too proud to ask for help even when she needed it. Seeing her beg was like watching a star crumble. He bought a hot meal and a thick jacket, and as he approached, she instinctively pulled her sign closer, expecting a complaint, not kindness. When he held the food out, she hesitated, studying him with tired suspicion. She thanked him softly, unable to meet his eyes for long. He still didn't tell her who he was. It wasn't time. For 3 days, he returned, each morning bringing her something useful, a blanket, gloves, warm tea. On the 4th day, recognition finally flickered in her eyes. She blinked at him, searching his face, her voice cracking as she whispered his name. She apologized before he could ask anything. Apologized for disappearing, for hurting him, for every unanswered question. But when he asked why she was here now, she shut down, insisting he shouldn't get involved. She didn't deserve help, she said. Life had punished her enough. She looked away as if expecting him to walk off like everyone else. He didn't leave. His kindness didn't come from old love. It came from human decency, from the understanding that people break in silent ways. He contacted a small charity he volunteered with, one that offered food, temporary shelter, and dignity discreetly. They arranged a cot for her, a warm meal, and a counselor. She accepted reluctantly, still unsure why a man she once abandoned cared more than the world she fell into. She never asked how she ended up there. She only clutched the thin blanket the shelter gave her and whispered that it felt like the first safe place she had seen in years. In the quiet hours of shelter nights, she revealed pieces of her missing years. She spoke of a stepfather's cruelty, of running away, of losing her savings when a stranger she trusted robbed her. She described sleeping in bus stations, then taking a low-paying job where a supervisor harassed her. When she refused him, he fired her under false accusations. She drifted into the streets, surviving on luck and small acts of kindness from strangers. She told the story simply, not seeking sympathy, as if her hardships were nothing more than chapters she was forced to read. He listened without judgment. He wanted to ask why she left him years ago, but he didn't. Her life had clearly been unraveling long before. She reached the street, asking would only reopen wounds. Instead, he helped quietly, setting up a small cleaning job in his corporate building, through a volunteer network. She didn't know it was connected to him. She only knew someone recommended her. When she began working again, she walked into the building with cautious hope, her steps steady but her eyes wary, like someone expecting disaster at every corner. He watched her from a distance, proud of her attempt to rebuild. But in a corporate building, vulnerability is easily spotted. A senior manager, known for targeting new workers, began noticing her. He questioned her tasks too sharply, searched her cleaning cart when no one was watching, and smirked whenever she hurried past. Within a week, rumors spread that she was difficult, unreliable, even dishonest. Someone claimed she stole supplies. Someone else said she created problems. It didn't take long before HR marked her name with suspicion. He knew this pattern. The same manager had once tried to sabotage him when he refused to cover up a financial mismatch. The man thrived on fear, choosing targets who couldn't defend themselves. She was perfect prey, and this time he wouldn't stay silent. Not when a woman who was finally standing, again was being pushed back toward the edge. He began gathering evidence quietly. Late nights reviewing security footage, saving emails, recording subtle threats the manager made to junior staff. He didn't tell her because she would panic or quit. He needed the truth sealed before anyone interfered. After days of work, he created a file thick with proof. Videos of the manager planting items in her cart, audio of him intimidating another worker, messages revealing a pattern of harassment. He didn't present it publicly. He delivered it straight to the board, calmly, silently, strategically. The reaction was immediate. HR scrambled. Executives demanded explanations. Within a week, the manager was suspended and later fired, and she was cleared of all accusations without knowing who stood behind her. She thought she had been saved by luck, but it wasn't luck. It was him doing what kindness demands even in the shadows. When she learned the truth, it wasn't through rumors or whispers. A junior employee timidly approached her during a break, telling her that the evidence that saved her job had come from someone she once knew. The employee didn't reveal his name, but the way she froze made it clear she already understood. She walked toward his office slowly, each step heavy with disbelief. She hadn't spoken to him properly since the shelter nights. Their encounters were polite but distant. She thought distance protected him from her damaged past, yet he had protected her without hesitation. She knocked softly, almost apologetically. When he looked up and saw her standing there, he knew she had found out. She stepped inside, her hands trembling as she tried to speak but failed. Her apologies spilled out in broken pieces. Apologies for leaving years ago, for dragging her troubles into his workplace, for being someone he had to rescue again. He listened quietly, letting her feel heard, not rushed. And when she finally stopped, eyes red from trying not to cry, he told her something she never expected, that kindness was not a transaction, and her past choices didn't define her worth. She told him she didn't run from him all those years ago, because she didn't care. She ran because she was drowning in problems she didn't know how to share. Her home life had been toxic long before they met. Her stepfather controlled everything, her money, movements, and sense of safety. Leaving silently was the only courage she had back then. She feared that if she told him, he would try to help and end up hurt. Silence felt safer than involving him. But silence became the reason she lost everything. He didn't interrupt her. Kindness doesn't need to speak loudly. When she finished, he simply nodded and told her the truth didn't erase the pain. But understanding it gave both of them closure they never had. She cried openly then. Not out of guilt, but out of relief. Relief that someone who had every right to turn his back chose to stand beside her instead. It was a strange, delicate moment between two people shaped by pain but guided by empathy. Their lives didn't blend back into romance. Neither expected that. What formed instead was something steadier, a quiet mutual respect. He never treated her like someone fragile. She never treated him like a savior. Their interactions became honest, simple, grounded. She worked diligently, eager to prove she earned her place. He offered silent support from a distance, stepping in only when absolutely necessary. As weeks passed, she restored small pieces of her life. She saved most of her salary, choosing to live modestly. She visited the shelter occasionally, not as a resident but as a volunteer, helping women who reminded her of who she once was. She listened to their stories and offered practical support without revealing her own wounds. Kindness flowed naturally through her because she understood the value of being seen when the world looks away. One afternoon, she approached him with news. She had rented her own room, a small space with a bed, a little window, and a lock she controlled. The pride in her voice was quiet, but bright. He congratulated her sincerely, and she smiled in a way he hadn't seen in years. She said rebuilding her life wasn't about being rescued. It was about being trusted. He didn't reply because he knew she already understood. But the story didn't end with calm. Life rarely allows peace without testing it. Months later, the company faced internal audits triggered by the manager's earlier misconduct. Shadows from that era threatened to pull innocent workers into suspicion. One auditor questioned her past, employment gaps, and demanded documentation she didn't have. Rumors resurfaced, whispering that she might have been involved in something illicit before joining. Fear crept back into her like cold water. He noticed her returning to old habits. Quiet walks during lunch, avoiding eye contact, working late so she wouldn't think. Without confronting her directly, he began quietly countering the new suspicion. He helped HR gather legitimate records from the shelter confirming her time there. He collected statements from co-workers praising her work. He ensured the board knew she had been targeted before and cleared, with solid evidence. All this without telling her. Heroes who work in silence don't wait for thanks. The audit concluded with her record deemed clean. HR apologized for the stress caused. When she found out how many people stood up for her, she suspected who initiated it. She went to him again, this time not burdened by guilt but overwhelmed by gratitude. She told him that kindness had rebuilt her life more than any paycheck, and she wished she could repay him. He said repayment wasn't needed. Seeing her find stability was enough. Over time, she grew into someone others admired quietly. New employees often asked her advice. Some came to her with their problems because she listened without judgment. She became known as the one person who noticed the invisible struggles around her. And every time she offered help, she remembered the cold day outside the mall when a familiar face refused to walk by. Their relationship remained rooted in mutual respect. They didn't need romance to define the bond between them. They had something rarer, proof that kindness can reconnect broken paths without forcing them into something they shouldn't be. In a world full of noise, their story stayed silent and steady. The moral of their journey wasn't spoken aloud. It lived in their actions. That kindness given without expectation is the greatest form of strength. That people aren't defined by their lowest days. That some heroes are never celebrated because they choose to act quietly rather than be seen. She became a symbol of resilience. He became the silent hero who believed in second chances.